My wife's mother harshly announced there was no room for her grandkids, indicating the end of monthly assistance. After stopping her rent payments and removing my children indefinitely, she frantically tried to contact me with 47 unanswered calls in 2 weeks. Be me, still processing all this after 8 months. Need to get it off my chest. Remember that Saturday like it was yesterday. Have 2 kids. Tommy, 9 boy. Lucy, 7 girl. Both practically vibrating with excitement in the back seat. Driving to see their grandparents. Lucy spent all morning making this construction paper card. Covered it in hearts and those foam stickers she loves. Made it specially for Grandma. Tommy carefully balancing the red velvet cake from that fancy bakery downtown, the one my mom always brags about to her friends, but complains is too sweet when it's just us. Classic her, all about appearances. Pull into their familiar suburban driveway in my 2019 Honda Pilot. Not the fanciest car, but reliable and paid off. Get that familiar knot in my stomach. Been getting it since teenage years, whenever I have to deal with them. Their modest split-level home looks the same as always. Meticulously maintained outside, emotionally suffocating within, lawn perfectly manicured. Not a single weed dares to show its face. Dad's prized tulip garden lines the walkway. Same ones I got screamed at for accidentally hitting with a football when I was 13. Park behind my sister, Rebecca's shiny new BMW X5. Least though she'd never admit it. Take a deep breath. All right, troops, remember what we talked about, I say. Meet their eyes in the rearview mirror. Best behavior, and if anything makes you uncomfortable, just give me the signal. Signal was tugging their earlobe. Worked it out after the last disaster. When my dad made Tommy cry, by criticizing his baseball pitching form for 20 straight minutes. When we knock, my mother Eleanor opens the door. Her practiced smile instantly faltering when she sees the kids, wearing one of her church dresses, even though it's just family dinner. Hair freshly colored that particular shade of blonde. The one that's supposed to hide the gray, but actually just makes women of a certain age look like they're trying too hard. Daniel, we weren't expecting the children, she whispers. Pulls me aside while my kids stand awkwardly on the porch. Her too strong perfume makes my nose itch. We talked about this Tuesday, I say firmly. I specifically mentioned bringing them. She glances nervously behind her, lowers her voice even more. We only set places for the adults and Rebecca's children. There simply isn't enough room. Look past her to see the dining room table, perfectly set. My father Walter at the head. My younger sister Rebecca and her 3 kids already seated. I'm 37. Spent most of my adult life trying to win their approval. After college, got a good job as a pharmaceutical rep. Traveling across 4 states. Not glamorous work, but pays well enough to support my family and still bail out my parents whenever they call. With their endless emergencies, I'm good at my job too. Consistently in top 5% of salespeople in my region. Not that they ever acknowledge that. According to them, just got lucky landing the job. Because my college roommate's cousin put in a good word. Never mind that I worked my ass off through college. 2 jobs while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. Never mind that I rose through the ranks on my own merit. My wife Claire waiting in the car. She stopped coming to these family dinners months ago, after my mother made one too many passive-aggressive comments about her parenting. I'll just grab drive-thru and eat at home, she said. It's not worth the drama. Should have listened to her. 23 years. That's how long I've been their personal bank. Since my first paycheck at 16 working at the movie theater. Been handing over money ever since. College fund? Used it to pay their property taxes when Dad lost his job. Wedding savings? Gone when Mom needed dental work they couldn't afford. Despite their annual cruises to the Caribbean. Down payment for our first house? Delayed 3 years because Rebecca needed help with her student loans. After dropping out of her 4th attempt at college. Just last month, they called asking for $2,800 for a critical roof repair. Later found out from their neighbor it wasn't even true. Was actually to help Rebecca make a down payment on her new car after she totaled her previous one while texting and driving. Neighbor mentioned it casually, not realizing I didn't know. Your sister sure is lucky to have such generous parents helping her with that new BMW after that accident, he said. While I was dropping off a package that had been delivered to their house by mistake, standing there watching Tommy look up at me with confusion in his eyes. Dad, what's happening? Something inside me finally broke. Maybe it was seeing his face so innocent, unaware of the decades of manipulation I'd endured. Maybe it was remembering how my father had missed Tommy's birthday party last year, because Rebecca's daughter had a dance recital the same day. Or maybe it was just the final straw. After years of being treated like an ATM with legs, "We're leaving," I say. My voice steadier than I expected. Feel a strange calm wash over me. Like when you finally make a decision you've been putting off for years. Eleanor grabs my arm, digging her manicured nails into my bicep. "Don't be ridiculous, Daniel." Her voice has that saccharine tone, the one she uses when trying to manipulate me in front of others. Sweet on the surface, threatening underneath. Stand my ground. Feel the muscles in my jaw tighten. At 6 feet 3 inches and 225 pounds. Down from 250 after I'd started hitting the gym regularly last year. Stress relief and all that. I wasn't the chubby pushover I'd been in my youth. Built myself up physically at least. Even if emotionally I was still letting myself be walked all over. I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being a father. And starting today, I'm no longer paying your mortgage. The silence that followed was deafening. Walter's fork clattered against his plate. "What did you just say to your mother?" he demanded. His voice having that edge that used to make me flinch as a kid. At 68, his hair was mostly gray now, but he still had the imposing build of the college football linebacker he once was. With forearms thick as tree trunks from 40 years as a construction foreman. Before he'd retired. "You heard me," I reply. Square my shoulders, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. But refuse to back down. Not this time. Find someone else to fund your lifestyle, while you treat their children like unwanted guests. Rebecca snorted from her seat at the table. "Are you seriously threatening Mom and Dad over a seating arrangement? God, you always were so sensitive." At 34, she still had the bratty attitude of the spoiled teenager she'd once been. 3 kids from 2 different failed marriages hadn't matured her one bit. Look at my sister. The perpetual favorite, never held accountable for anything. This isn't about chairs, Rebecca. This is about 2 decades of being treated like an ATM, while being made to feel like I'm imposing whenever I show up, my voice getting louder but I don't care. 20-plus years of bottled-up resentment finally finding an outlet. Walter stood up, knocked his chair back. "After everything we've sacrificed for you," his face turning that dangerous shade of red. I remembered from childhood arguments. Laugh right in his face. Feels amazing. Like releasing a pressure valve. What exactly have you sacrificed? Because from where I'm standing, all you've done is take my money and make my children feel worthless. Take my kids' hands. "Come on, guys, let's go get burgers." As we walk out, hear Eleanor's panicked whisper to Walter. They weren't upset about losing me. They were terrified of losing access to my wallet. In the car, Lucy asks in a small voice, "Daddy, why doesn't Grandma like us?" That question hits me harder than any punch I'd taken during my boxing days in college. Grip the steering wheel until my knuckles go white. Tommy puts his arm around his little sister, showing more emotional intelligence at 9 than my parents had in their entire lives. "It's not you, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that have nothing to do with kids. But inside I'm making a vow. Never again. My children wouldn't grow up feeling the way I had. Like they were somehow defective or unworthy of love." The cycle ended with me. Claire looks at me with concern. When we all pile back into the car, "That was fast," she says, noticing my grim expression, and the kids' confused faces. "I'll explain later," I mumble, not wanting to get into it in front of the kids. "Who wants Shake Shack?" The cheer from the back seat lifts my spirits a little, but my mind is racing with what I'd just done. Had I really just cut off my parents financially? After all these years? Part of me was terrified. But another part, a part that had been silent for too long, felt something close to relief. The next week passed in blessed silence. No calls from my parents, though Rebecca bombarded me with texts, ranging from guilt-tripping to straight-up verbal abuse. Blocked her number after she suggested Claire had turned me against my real family. The irony of her using the phrase real family wasn't lost on me. She'd been trying to exclude my kids from family gatherings for years. One of her texts still stands out in my memory. "Mom and Dad gave you everything. And this is how you repay them? By abandoning them when they need you most. You always were selfish. Claire's turned you against your own blood. I hope you're happy now that you've broken Mom's heart." Almost wrote back pointing out, if they'd given me everything, Why had I been paying their mortgage for the last decade? But new engaging would just drag me back into their toxic orbit. So I blocked her, tried to focus on my actual family. The one I'd made, not the one I'd been born into. Then came the call I'd been expecting. Eleanor's voice dripped with desperation when I answered. Rebecca's been let go from her job. They're accusing her of stealing from the company. We need your help. Bark out a laugh, drawing a curious look from Claire, who was folding laundry across the room. Of course you do. Not calling to apologize? Just calling because you need cash. She was falsely accused. And now your father and I can't make the mortgage payment. Rebecca was helping us. Everything suddenly clicks into place. They'd been double-dipping, taking my money while also relying on Rebecca's income. They'd bet on 2 horses, and now one had fallen. Wait, I thought Rebecca just got promoted to district manager last month? That's what you were bragging about at Uncle Steve's BBQ. Eleanor's voice turns frantic. She's had money troubles, needed advances on her salary. But that's not important right now. We need $3,900 for the mortgage by Thursday. No, I say simply. The word felt foreign in my mouth when directed at my mother, but also strangely empowering. The silence on the other end was almost satisfying. What do you mean no? I mean no. N-O. I'm done sending money. Not one more cent. But we'll lose the house. Her voice had risen to that shrill pitch. That used to make me instantly comply with whatever she wanted. Then you'll lose the house. Hang up. Surprised by how steady my hand was, the weekly sessions with my therapist had prepared me for this moment. But it still felt surreal to finally enforce a boundary. Claire sat beside me, putting her hand on my knee. You okay? Nod, feeling lighter than I had in years. Yeah, I think I finally am. Over dinner that night, I explained to Claire exactly what had happened at my parents' house, and the subsequent phone call. She listened without interrupting, twirling fettuccine around her fork thoughtfully. You know they're going to escalate, right? She said when I'd finished. This isn't going to be the end of it. Nod, pushing a meatball around my plate. I know, but I'm done letting them manipulate me. I'm done being their personal bank. Claire reached across the table, squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. It's about time. Her hazel eyes were steady, supportive. She'd been telling me for years that my relationship with my parents was unhealthy, but had never pushed too hard. Knowing I needed to come to the realization myself, I just keep thinking about the kids, I say. I don't want them growing up thinking it's normal to be treated like second-class citizens by their own grandparents. They have other grandparents, Claire pointed out. My parents adore them and show it. It was true. Claire's parents, though they lived 4 states away, made consistent efforts to be involved in our children's lives. Never missed a birthday. Called weekly just to chat with the kids. Saved all year to take us on a family vacation each summer. They weren't wealthy people. Her dad was a retired chemistry teacher, and her mom still worked part-time as a nurse. But they gave what really mattered. Genuine love and attention. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Made me wonder why I'd spent so many years chasing approval from parents who had never really seen me. 4 days later, my phone rang at 10:45 p.m. Walter had chest pains. Eleanor was hysterical, but still didn't call an ambulance. Daniel, your father's clutching his chest. What should I do? Already grabbing my car keys, heart pounding despite everything. Couldn't ignore a potential heart attack. The thought of my father dying, with things unresolved between us, sent a spike of panic through me. Call 911 Mom right now. But ambulances cost a fortune, she whined. Can't you just come drive him? You're only 20 minutes away. Stand in my hallway, keys in hand. Stunned, silent. Even with Walter potentially having a heart attack, she was worried about money first. It was so typical that I almost laughed. Call the damn ambulance, Mom, now. I'll meet you at Memorial Hospital. Drive to the hospital. Hands clenched tight on the wheel. Storm of emotions whirling through me. Worry for my father's health. Anger at my mother's priorities. Guilt for not immediately jumping in my car to help. Frustration that even a medical emergency was somehow being used to manipulate me. It was all there, churning in my gut like bad takeout. Emergency room was chaotic as usual on a Thursday night. Drunk college kids with minor injuries. Elderly patients looking confused and frightened. Harried nurses trying to manage it all. Spot my mother in the waiting area, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. That had seen better days. "Where is he?" I ask. "Not bothering with pleasantries?" They took him back right away. She sniffed, said it might be his heart, Nod taking a seat, a few chairs away from her. We sat in uncomfortable silence for almost an hour before a doctor emerged, looking for the family of Walter Thompson. "Your father's stable," the doctor told us. "It wasn't a heart attack. His EKG and troponin levels are normal. What he experienced was an anxiety attack. Combined with his chronically high blood pressure, we're giving him something to help him relax now, and I'm adjusting his blood pressure medication." The relief I felt was immediate and overwhelming. Hadn't realized just how worried I'd been, until the tension drained from my shoulders all at once. "When can he come home?" Eleanor asked. "We'd like to keep him overnight for observation. Just to be safe. He can be discharged in the morning, provided his blood pressure stabilizes. The most important thing is reducing stress in his life." The doctor gave us a meaningful look, as if he'd somehow divined the family drama in play. As I was handling the discharge paperwork and paying the ER visit fee, because of course they forgot their insurance card, Eleanor appeared at my elbow. "The mortgage is due tomorrow, Daniel." Stare at her, unable to believe what I'm hearing. Her husband just had a health scare, serious enough to send him to the emergency room, and all she cared about was the mortgage payment. Did you hear what the doctor just said about lowering stress? Maybe worrying less about money would help. How are we supposed to not worry about money when you've abandoned us? We, your parents. Look at her. Really look at this small, shrewd woman who had given birth to me, but had never truly supported me, who had always viewed me as a resource, rather than a son. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the calculating look in her eyes, the way she was assessing whether this crisis could be leveraged to reopen my wallet. "Yes, you are my parents, and parents should love all their children equally. They should care about all their grandchildren equally. They should build their kids up, not tear them down to elevate their favorite." She blinks rapidly, tears forming, not from hurt, I realized, but from the dawning recognition that her meal ticket was walking away. "We've always loved you, Daniel." "No, you've always used me." "There's a difference." Hand her the discharge instructions. Walk out past the waiting room, full of actual emergencies. Driving home at midnight. Call Claire to update her. "He's okay. It was an anxiety attack, not a heart attack." "Thank goodness," she says, genuine relief in her voice. Despite her feelings about my parents, "Are you coming home now?" "Yeah, but get this. Mom asked about the mortgage payment." While I was paying the ER bill, Claire's sigh is audible even through the car speakers. "Of course she did." "Are you okay?" Think about it for a moment. "Yeah, actually, I think I am." It's like seeing her try to manipulate me, even in a crisis. Just confirms I'm making the right choice. "Come home," she says softly. I'll wait up. When I pull into our driveway 20 minutes later, the porch light is on. Claire sitting on the front steps, 2 mugs of chamomile tea steaming beside her. It's a small thing, but it speaks volumes. This is what real family looks like. Someone who genuinely cares about your well-being, not what you can do for them. 2 weeks later, after the foreclosure notice arrived at my parents' house, my mother made sure to text me a photo of it, captioned only with, "See what you've done." My younger brother Nathan called me. At 33, he'd always been the forgotten middle child, not exploited like me, not spoiled like Rebecca. "Mom's going ballistic," he said, his voice tired, blaming you for everything. "Says you abandoned the family when they needed you most." Nathan had always seen through our parents' favoritism. As the middle child, he was mostly ignored. In some ways worse than my experience. At least I got attention, even if it was mostly to ask for money. Nathan was just forgotten. "You holding up okay?" I asked. We weren't as close as we could be. My parents had done a good job, making sure their children never formed a united front, but I still cared about him. He sighed heavily. "I'm looking for my own place. Can't stand living here anymore. Mom keeps trying to get me to call you about the money." Nathan had moved back home after a rough divorce 2 years ago, supposedly to get back on his feet. But my parents had made it so comfortable for him, no rent, no expectations, that he'd gotten stuck in a holding pattern. "Don't let them drag you into this." "I won't, but Daniel, there's something you should know. That money you've been sending for their mortgage, a lot of it was going to Rebecca." My grip tightened on the phone. What do you mean? Rebecca's been in debt for years. Online gambling. She'd blow through everything, then run crying to mom and dad. They've been giving her your mortgage money, then guilting you into sending more. The betrayal cut deep, though I should have seen it coming. They hadn't just favored Rebecca, they'd actively deceived me to fund her addiction. Thanks for telling me, Nate. And if you need a place to crash while apartment hunting, my door's open. Meant it too. Despite our complicated history, he was still my brother. Maybe without our parents' toxic influence, we could actually build a real relationship. When Nathan showed up 3 days later, with just 2 duffel bags and his laptop, knew things at the house had gotten bad. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes, a defeated slump to his shoulders. That reminded me too much of myself a few months ago, that night over Chinese takeout. He filled me in on the whole mess, how Rebecca had been fired for borrowing money from the company accounts to cover gambling debts, how our parents had been funneling my support to her for years, how they'd been lying about home repairs and medical bills to squeeze extra cash from me. The roof repair last month, Nathan said. Around a mouthful of kung pao chicken, that was for Rebecca's car down payment. And the water heater before that? That was to cover her credit card minimum payments. After she maxed out 3 cards at online casinos. Feel sick. Not just at being lied to, but at the realization of how deep this deception went. It wasn't just favoring one child over another. It was a years-long conspiracy to extract money from me under false pretenses. They don't think they did anything wrong, Nathan said, shaking his head. They genuinely believe you owe them. Like it's not even a question in their minds. You're supposed to support them because they raised you. End of story. Well, they're about to learn a hard lesson about consequences, I replied, feeling the weight of responsibility for my brother now too. But unlike the burden of supporting my parents, this felt right. This was family helping family, not family exploiting family. Nathan stayed in our guest room for the next week, gradually opening up more about the toxic environment. He'd been living in how our parents constantly compared him unfavorably to both Rebecca and me, how they dismissed his IT security career as playing with computers, how they'd sabotaged his efforts to move out by creating dramatic crises whenever he started looking at apartments. It's like they need to keep us all dependent on them somehow, he said. One night as we sat on the back deck, after the kids had gone to bed, they helped trash my marriage too. Did you know that? They'd call Monica at all hours with emergencies, tell her I wasn't supporting them enough, make her feel guilty for wanting a normal life. I hadn't known I'd been so caught up in my own struggle with them that I'd missed how they were doing the same thing to Nathan, just in a different way. I'm sorry, man. I should have seen it. He shrugged. We were all blind to it in different ways. That's how they wanted it. Divide and conquer, you know? It was the first real conversation we'd had in years, maybe ever. Without the toxic influence of our parents hovering over us, we were finally able to see each other clearly, and I realized I actually liked my brother. He was smart, insightful, had a dry sense of humor that came out when he wasn't being crushed under our parents' disapproval. By the end of the week, he'd found an apartment and a better-paying job at a cybersecurity firm downtown. I helped him move in. We made plans to have dinner weekly, just the two of us, rebuilding a relationship that had been stunted by our upbringing. A week later, Eleanor showed up unannounced at my workplace, was heading to my car after a long day of client meetings, when I spotted her waiting by my Range Rover, looking small and defeated. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my distance. "We're being evicted next week," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Richard's medical bills, the missed mortgage payments, it's all caught up with us." I said nothing. Just waited. "Rebecca's gone to stay with a friend in Nevada," she continued, her voice breaking. She said she can't deal with the stress anymore. Of course she'd abandoned them. The minute they couldn't support her anymore, "I have nowhere to go, Daniel," Eleanor whispered, finally looking up with tears in her eyes. "I'm begging you. If not for me, then for your father. He's still in rehab. And they'll discharge him soon. We'll be on the street." For a moment, just a moment, I felt that old familiar pull, the guilt, the obligation. Then I remembered Tommy's face, when he realized his grandparents didn't want him at their table. I remembered Lucy asking why Grandma didn't like them. "There's a decent senior living facility on Maple Drive," I said finally. I'll pay for 3 months. That's it. After that, you're on your own. Her face showed shock, then anger, then grudging acceptance. You'd really do this to your own mother? No, Mom. You did this to yourself. Got in my car and drove home. To my family, my real family, the one I'd chosen and built with love, instead of obligation. That night as Claire and I sat on the deck, watching Tommy and Lucy play with the dog in the backyard, she asked if I was okay. Yeah, I said, realizing I meant it. For the first time in my adult life, I think I actually am. Nathan's been doing well too. He's got a steady girlfriend now, someone he met through work. He comes over for dinner at least once a week. And he's great with the kids. Tommy especially looks up to him. They bond over video games and computers. It's like we're building the family we should have had all along. Mom and Dad ended up taking my offer on the senior living facility. They didn't have much choice. They were literally days away from being homeless. Rebecca never came back from Nevada. Last I heard from Nathan, who still gets occasional updates from a cousin. She's working as a waitress and still gambling whatever she can. Some people never change. Dad's health deteriorated pretty quickly after the anxiety attack. The doctors say he probably won't live more than another year. Sometimes I feel guilty about that. But then I remember that his health problems were largely self-inflicted. Decades of stress, poor diet, refusing to follow medical advice, and treating everyone around him like garbage. You reap what you sow. Mom tries to contact me every couple of weeks, usually with some new crisis or guilt trip. The senior living facility is too small. The other residents are beneath her. Dad needs some experimental treatment. That insurance won't cover. It's always something. I've set up an email filter that sends her messages straight to a folder. I check when I'm in the right headspace, which isn't often. The irony is that if they just treated me, and more importantly, my children, with basic decency and respect, I would have happily continued supporting them. They could have had a comfortable retirement, regular visits from grandchildren who adored them, family holiday gatherings, all of it. Instead, they chose to play favorites, to manipulate, to exploit, and now they're facing the consequences of those choices. Sometimes people ask if I miss my parents. I don't. What I miss is the idea of parents, loving, supportive people, who want the best for their kids. But that's not what I had. What I have now is freedom. What I have now is a home, where all children are equally welcome. What I have now is the certainty that I've broken the cycle. My kids will never know what it feels like to be valued only for their usefulness. Sometimes family isn't who raised you. It's who you choose to surround yourself with after you discover your worth. I chose myself. I chose my children. I chose honesty over manipulation, and I've never looked back.